Hey guys, how you doing? So for the past 3 months, I've been studying for software engineering interviews, and one of the biggest problems I've seen is that it's very difficult to try and find easy and quick to understand tutorials for very common interview questions. So I wanted to just do a simple and quite recurring question, which is how to reverse a linked list, which often catches people off guard, and it definitely has caught me off guard, even though it's something that isn't too hard to implement. So today we're going to be looking at conceptually how to reverse a linked list, and then a quick Python implementation. So if you don't know what a linked list is, it's basically a data structure composed of different nodes. So here we have a node 1, a node 2, node 3, node 5. So each node holds basically two different things. A value, for example, this first node holds a value 1, and then a pointer to the node after it. So here we see an arrow pointing to the next one. For this second node, it holds a value 2 and points to the next one, which is 3. Some other technicalities, a linked list always ends with a none or a null value. Another thing, the first node is called the head, usually. It's just the start of the list. And the last one is called the tail. Now, let's look at how we would implement something like this in Python. So to implement a linked list, very easy. You just really need the node and the point and a pointer to the next one. Because by pointing, each node pointing to another one, you're basically creating a linked list already. So to initialize this, we just made a class called node. We have an init just to initialize it, and we pass in itself and data. Now self.data is going to be the value that you hold in the node. And so we're going to set it to the value that we pass in whenever we create this. And we're going to let it have a value called next, which is a pointer to the next value. So boom, that's as easy as it is to create a node within a linked list. And this is basically the structure that you're going to use to create the linked list itself. Now, how do we reverse this linked list? Well, there's two main methods, which is an iterative method and a recursive method. Now, I recommend the iterative method. It just seems easier in my perspective. And for me, visually, I just swap the arrows. So if you change the direction, so it points the other way. And remember that it has to end with none. So none just has to come up over here. And there you go. You have it reversed. All you have to do is basically swap the direction of the arrows and move that none value to be where the beginning was before. So let's just undo this so we have our original list. But how do you do this programmatically, right? Well, you have to initiate basically 3 different variables, which will point to different nodes in this list. The first variable you want to create is called prev. And this is going to be basically the previous value that you point to. We're going to set it equal to none. You'll understand quickly why we're doing this. We then create another variable, and we set it equal to the head of our linked list, and we call it current. So this is going to be the current node that we're always pointing to while we're going forward in the list. Next, we make another variable, and we call it next. And what this variable does is it just always points to the variable in front of current. Now you might ask, how from here do we suddenly reverse the list? Well, we initialize current equal to the head. We set next equal to the node in front of current. So right here, we have current equal to the first node, next equal to the second node. And what we do now is we set the next, remember that a node in a linked list holds a value to the value of the node, but also a pointer to the next one. Well, we set the pointer of the next one equal to prev. There we go. All right. Once we've done this, we basically want to move all the other values forward one and do the same, right? So it's that reversal of arrows, which will reverse the whole list, really. So we move prev up 1, setting equal to current. We set current equal to next to push it up 1, and we set next equal to its next value because it's still pointing to the one after. Now here, we do the exact same that we've just done. So we set the node that is in current to point to the previous one, like this. Sorry, my Microsoft skills aren't very good. So set current to point to the previous one, and then we just push them all forward one. So set previous equal to this current one. We set this current one equal to the variable in next. So like that. And we push next up one. We do the same now as before. We set the pointer of current to be equal to the previous node, like that. And now we push them all forward one. So previous goes up one, current is equal to next, and next is equal to the one in front. Do the same here. Now the next value of current, we want to point to previous. Sorry, this is not a very straight linked list. And now push them all forward one. Here you go, here you go. And next obviously can't be pushed forward anymore. All right, and now we've actually reversed the whole list. We used to have the head being at 1 and the tail being at 5, and now the head, we've reversed all the arrows, and the head is at 5, and now the tail is at 1, and it ends with none. But now we see how we've done this on a conceptual level, but how do you do it programmatically? Well, let's implement it in Python. So let's create a function called reverse, linked list. And it'll take the head. So if you remember, the head is the first node in your linked list. And we initialize those 3 variables that we talked about. Previous, which was equal to none. Current, which is equal to the start of the list. And next, which we'll define very shortly. Now, I'll just reverse all this so we can go back to the beginning for ease of explanation. All right, so currently we have this. The previous node equal to none, the current node equal to the start of the list. And now what we want to do is basically do this iterative method of setting the arrow of the current node to the previous and pushing them all forward until this current node reaches here, the last one, because then there's no more. In our Python reverse function, we say while our current node is not none, so while we haven't reached the end of the list, we want to do a couple things. First, our next node, we haven't even defined yet, right? So we want our next node equal to our current node dot next. Now basically, if we look at this conceptually, we set our next variable, which we've just created, to the value in front of our current node. So there we go. What do we do next now? Well, remember we set the arrow pointing from the current node to the previous node instead of the next node. So if we do this in our Python function, we set current dot next equal to previous. In this case is none. So all we've done here is this. Now what we had to do is push these values all forward. The way we do this is first in the code, we now set the previous node equal to the current node. What this does on a conceptual level is basically push this previous box onto that first node. All right. Next thing we want to do is set the current node, push that current node forward as well, and make it equal to that next value. So push this equal to the next. Now, what we want to do is for this next value to be pushed forward one as well. But what we see is that because this loop repeats until the current node is equal to none, we see the first line here is actually pushing the next value up from our current value. So this is basically all the code we need. We have this loop, which basically makes the current value have an arrow point to the previous, and then pushes them all forward one. So first prev is equal to cur, as we see here. Current.next equals prev, then prev, the previous one is equal to the current one, and then the current node is equal to the next. So we have this iterative cycle, and that's why it's called the iterative method. That basically has a current one, point to the previous one, then the previous one equal the current equal the next goes up one, and does this until the current node is equal to none. So again, do this, push this one forward, and we see that current is equal to none, and it stops. But now, what we really want to return is this previous value, because it's now the start of our new list. So at the end of our function, we just say return prev, which is the new pointer to our new list. And that's the tutorial. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope to cover a couple other interview questions. I just think that there's been a lot of learnings I've had to do in the past 3 months to try and get up to par with some of the interview questions asked by some large companies. And I'd really like to just share this knowledge so it's easier for anyone really studying for these interviews. Thanks so much and have a good day.